Now remember, this protected species, Philip Lowe, has said, quote, "It's unclear at the moment how far interest rates will need to go up," unquote. Well, how does business make responsible decisions in that environment? Well, enter the most successful federal treasurer in recent memory, Peter Costello, who's joined with trenchant criticism of the protected species, Dr. Lowe, and the Reserve Bank, when Mr. Costello said last week, quote, "The bank completely missed the surge in inflation, heightening the risk of recession with its worst monetary policy failure in 3 decades," unquote. As I've indicated to you, thankfully, the new Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, will order an independent review of the Reserve Bank, the first since the 1980s. Peter Costello said he had believed as far back as the March quarter that inflation was an emerging problem. Mr. Costello's words, quote, "Unlike a lot of the Johnny-come-latelys who only recently became RBA critics," said Peter Costello, "the RBA completely missed the takeoff point in the March quarter, and now it's behind the curve," unquote. He said, "Its primary duty is to manage the 2 to 3% inflation target, and it failed in that duty," unquote. I repeat the point I made last week. The central bank mandate is to secure the stability of the financial system. And in as many words, Peter Costello made the point that stability has been jeopardised by bad policy, bad judgment. Peter Costello said of the Reserve Bank, quote, "It is the worst failure in monetary policy since the 1990s, and the consequences are that the RBA now has to raise interest rates faster and further than otherwise would be the case," unquote. Mr. Costello didn't balk when he said last Friday, quote, "So why did it go wrong? And what should we do to ensure it won't happen again," unquote. Well, my answer to that is, under the current leadership of the Reserve Bank, we have no such guarantee. Dr. Lowe is now everywhere saying inflation's too high and monetary policy will be tightened. That is, jacking up interest rates for the wretched first home buyer who believed Dr. Lowe last November and borrowed money, which, if assurances hadn't been given by the Reserve Bank that the first increase in the cash rate may not be before 2024, the first home buyer may never have taken the borrowing plunge. Now we have inflation climbing beyond 5%, twice what the Reserve Bank's inflation target is, and the Reserve Bank can't tell us where this might end. But, quote, "Australians need to be prepared for high interest rates," unquote. Now look, you can mess around with language all you like, but I say again, the borrowing public have been rankly deceived by Lowe and the Reserve Bank. If the Governor, Dr. Philip Lowe, is not replaced, one must be left with the conclusion that he is one of Australia's most expensive protected species.